You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over.
This isn't a blood hole. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon. Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, a podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I'm your host, Ryan Lauer. The Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Just go to batmanonfilm.com, click on podcasts, and you'll find the Batman Podcast Network that has a whole list of other Bat-related shows that also like to dive into other nerdy subjects that we all, especially Peter Vera, love to frolic about in our free time. Batman Book Club is also on Patreon. So if you like what's going on with the show, you want to help support the show and keep the generators running in the Wayne Manor study, go to patreon.com/The Batman BC. Thank you for listening to episode 227, Digital Justice. Yes, let's get digital. And joining me for this is a man who he's been on here to cover one of the best Batman stories. He's been on here to cover one of the most frustrating Batman stories. And who knows, maybe he's here now to discuss one of the worst Batman stories. I don't know. We'll dig into it. It's my pal, Javi Trujillo. Hello, Javi.
Hello, Ryan. Long time no talk.
Yeah,
in digital realm.
Right? It's yeah, exactly. Fortunately, you and I can say, like, we do know that each other exists in the real world because we have shaken physical hands and eaten delicious cinnamon rolls together. So
I find it hard to believe that'll be 3 years ago.
Coming up on 3 years. That's
crazy,
insane.
Man.
And I've probably annoyed people because I bring it up quite a bit. But those cinnamon rolls are stuff legends
They were
are
really
made
good.
of. Ryan Haas, Eric Holzman know. Hello. Cinnamon rolls. Delicious. Now, Javi, we're talking in the month of February, and everybody knows the month of February is the month of love. I thought about this the other day, and I'm like, I'm going to ask Javi this. Do you remember when you fell in love with Batman?
No.
Okay.
I feel like Batman was
There
always
weren't
there.
instant sparks, huh? Oh, okay.
I mean,
right.
it's
Well,
just
there you go. Okay.
it was in my DNA,
Mm-hmm.
from my father. So he was a fan growing up when he was a little kid,
Mm-hmm.
and he loved the Adam West TV show, and
Yeah.
my first Batman figure was that Mego, not the ones with the clothes, but like the little, I think they call them like pocket heroes. They were like Star Wars action figure sized.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a blue and gray Batman figure before the Superpowers line even came out. That
Sure.
was like my first Batman toy. And I played with that thing till it got discolored and the arms broke off. And I don't have it anymore. Still have my Superpowers Batman, but
No. Okay.
yeah.
I've said on here before that I think I just came flying out of the womb. Batman.
That's fair.
Because I've asked my parents. My parents do not know of the I shall love the Bat moment. There was no, oh, this was when it happened. They don't know. I
Yeah.
do remember that I was in love with the Ninja Turtles before Batman, but we're talking about like 1 and 2 years old. And then at like 3, I do remember my earliest memory that I can think of with Batman was like seeing the VHS tape at my grandparents. And I grabbed the cover, the case, and all I wanted to do was watch Batman. That's like the first memory I have of Batman. But even that first memory is I already knew what Batman was apparently, and I wanted to watch Batman. So it's
Yeah.
like kind of like you, feels like Batman's always been there. So shout out, month of love, month of Batman. That's
I feel
every
like
month.
I feel like I loved Batman, but then like the wedding was 1989. It's like I told the first time I was on your show, like I talked
Yeah,
about
you were
why I love
flirting.
Batman.
You were
Yeah.
flirting with
We
Batman,
were
but
like
then
dating, but seeing other people.
Yeah.
But then 1989, it was
you said
like,
your I do's.
yeah, we got engaged with
All right.
Batman 432
There you go.
when I read
Okay.
that, and
Yeah.
then the wedding date was June
Nice.
23rd. Actually, technically June 24th was when I saw the movie. Because the 23rd was my birthday and my dad was working, so I had a party,
you had to
slumber
wait on him.
party And then the next day when he was off, he took
Uh-huh.
me and one of my friends to go see it as like birthday part two.
Mm.
So that would be the wedding day, you know. Because and then there was no looking back. And now
No.
I'm in an office surrounded by like Batman art and Batman toys and
Yeah.
like there's a Keaton on my desk.
Yeah.
So
There's a bat symbol on your shirt.
there's a
It's
bat
everywhere.
symbol on my shirt.
Yeah.
I've got a Batman coffee mug that I'm drinking out of right now. And we're gonna
Nope.
talk some Batman.
Till
With
the end, till death do you part.
oh wow, and it's just hitting me that what we're talking about is 35 years old.
Yes, I was actually going to get into that. So let's
Oh
let's
man.
um let's stop beating around the bush. Let's log in, log on. I don't know, plug
Cue the
in.
AOL
Cue
dial-up
the
noise.
AOL. Because we're going to talk about Batman Digital Justice. So, like you just said, Hoppy, we may be the first ones celebrating the 35th anniversary of Batman Digital Justice because this
Probably the
sucker
only ones.
came out in 1990. Written and illustrated, created by Pepe Moreno. We'll get on to this fella here in a quick moment. It was released in a hardcover in what now people would look and think of as like the Black Label format. But this wasn't the first one to do it. Obviously, prior to this, the Son of the Demon, Bride of the Demon books also came out in this format. Hardcover and then a trade paperback. And then, ironically enough, this is not available digitally,
Right? I
which
was
I
gonna
think is
say, like,
hilarious. Also, we may know why. Hobby for this. I mean, there's not many options to pick from. Which version did you choose, or which version did you read for this episode?
I've got my 1990 hardcover with the front page ripped out of it.
Score.
Yeah, like I don't know if it was a printing thing at the time because my best friend Anthony, he had the same problem. Like he got his copy first and like the front page came out. And then it didn't take long for when I finally got my copy for that to fall out too.
Yeah.
So of the two people I know, counting myself, who own this book
Mm-hmm.
physically, both had the same problems with that edition. So
Sign me up. I have the same hardcover.
nice.
My first page is fully intact.
Oh, that's good.
My entire book is actually in pretty. I mean, the dust jacket, you can tell is like maybe just like a little old. It's got some shelf.
It's
It spent
not
some time on
yellowed,
shelves.
but it
Yeah.
looks
Yes.
aged.
Yes. That's like
Yeah.
that's the only quote unquote complaint, and that maybe it was on the shelf in like an attic or a basement or something. Like it just smells like some age, not bad or anything. I think people don't understand. We need that Yankee Candle as well. Aged comic book that's
There you
not read
go.
much.
Oh man,
Um,
that 80s comic book paper smell.
yeah.
Make a candle of that, you will sell it by the truckload.
Right there with the floppies, make it a combo pack. Um, yeah, and funny that it says first printing because there was probably only a
I
first printer,
don't think they did, yeah.
not many. And it's funny because I bought this for $5 at the comic shop in 2021. And there's quite a few times growing up, I'd go to like some used bookstores with my uncle, and there was especially one section of like going downstairs in the basement and looking at shelves, and I knew the one section that had old collected books of comics and stuff. And this one I always saw was always there. I'd always grab it, I'd look at it, put it back. And then it's just funny to me, like it was consistent of every time I go to this place, that Digital Justice would be down there in that location, and it was. That wasn't where I bought it a few years ago, but it's funny to me that just remembering that and then how I found this book randomly, $5 in good shape as just a almost free, sort of deal. But again, we'll get into that. When did you first read this?
Back in 1990.
Oh, wow. Your
Yeah,
original.
yeah.
Good for you.
It was I didn't go to the comic book store, as frequently as I do now. Like it
Hmm.
wasn't a weekly thing back then because I was very reliant on parents to take me.
Hmm.
But I remember like just seeing it, like they had like a graphic novel section and just being like, wow, because like comics were $1. So to spend $25 on this was like a
Yeah.
big deal to me, especially when I didn't really have much money beyond like an allowance. And I would just like look at like they had this Iron Man computer generated novel too for
Hmm.
Marvel, and it was just like this is like the craziest thing I've ever seen. And like Spider-Man Kraven's Last Hunt, the hardcover, and just like
Oh yeah.
coveting those. But it's like, when am I ever gonna have the money for that? And I think I wound up getting this through like a mail order service that was advertised in the comics at the time. Like there'd
Gotcha.
be like a page and it was like, oh, here's this book is going to be hot. Buy
Yeah.
this. And it had like a really janky looking image of the bat comp as like the ad,
Hmm.
like that side profile shot of
Yeah.
the computer. And I think I got it from there, either by itself or it came in like a box set. I remember there was a starter kit for Batman, and it
Hmm.
came with like a pen with Batman on top and like little PVC figures of Batman and Robin with like that Giordano like arm outstretched pose, and a Batmobile, like a little Hot Toys Batmobile, not Hot Toys, Hot Wheels Batmobile, and like a '89 calendar from like the movie, and maybe this book
So
and
it's
maybe
basically
another
saying
comic.
buy anything and we'll throw digital justice in
Yeah,
with it for free. Okay.
yeah.
Got it. Uh, I first read this 4 days ago
For the first time.
for the first time. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh
It's
boy.
it was always something that I wanted that I said I'm going to read this. I don't know when, and wasn't looking for it when I found it for $5 and I bought it. And so I'm like, this is it. I'm gonna get it. And now
You
with
are
the
the bat
podcast,
librarian.
somebody's going to pick it. I know somebody's going to pick it, and we'll talk about it. And it will be nice to finally read it so I can say that I've done it. So yeah, it was the I started it, yeah, 4 days ago, read a nice chunk, then the next day read a nice chunk, and then finished it up. So there we go. This is the most intriguing question I'm going to ask you this entire conversation, Javi. Why digital justice?
Because I had a lot of fond memories of it as a teen. Like it blew me away at the time.
Okay.
And we're talking, that's 35 years ago. And because of my library being limited back then,
Hmm.
like I read the hell out of it as a teen growing up. But I haven't touched it in a really, really, really long time.
That's funny because
And
I actually did bring that up to Bill in the last episode where I'd said that Robin Dies at Dawn was one that was included in Greatest Batman Stories Ever Told. I had Greatest
yep.
Batman Stories Ever Told, I had Lonely Place of Dying, and then I had a stack of Batman, like Batman 436 through 460.
Mhm.
And growing up as a kid, that's all I had. So
Yeah.
those were what I just constantly kept going back to. And maybe like have more fond memories, maybe even of some of the lesser issues in that run. Although, were there any? It was a baller of a
Yeah,
time for Batman. But
it was.
so like you saying that, like it's for and not to sound like old man or anything, but for younger generations now, they won't experience that.
Yeah.
You just said it of kind of like limited on what you had in your house physically to grab. That was it. So that's just what you went to. That's what
I
you
mean,
read over and over.
it's like it's like my childhood compared to my kids, where we would watch the same VHS tapes over and over and over
Yep.
because we didn't have cable in my house, and just the four broadcast channels if you count
Hmm.
PBS and then later Fox, I guess. But like my kids grew up with like Netflix,
Yeah.
so like the rewatchability of things isn't necessarily because the material isn't good or bad. It's more of like there's just so much out there
Yeah.
that you're trying to experience it as much as you can. And like
Uh-huh.
now it's like it takes a while to reread something, I feel like, because I have so much Batman at my fingertips thanks to DC Universe Infinite that
Infinite.
that I haven't read yet. So
Yep.
it's hard. It's like, am I going to
Yeah.
go back to something I've read 5 times, or am I going to try and find something new?
Yeah.
and
And,
it's been a while since I read this.
and you were like, let's F up the system. Let's go digital justice.
Yeah, and it's like, and I wanted to read it again just like for myself to see how well it held up,
Sure.
and also just because I wanted to be the one to talk about it because
Yeah.
I didn't want someone else to take it and
Hmm.
then I'd be like, oh, I wanted to talk about it, and it is one of those weird things I just wanted to call attention to it because it's
Yeah.
off the beaten path. Like we've done some big stories like
Sure.
R.I.P.
Pray,
and but I wanted to get something a little more out
pray,
there.
pray,
Pray.
pray.
Paul Herman's favorite, Pray.
Yeah.
I think he
His,
listens to it,
his favorite's a Long
once
Halloween,
a
but
month.
pray is a close second.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Okay.
thought we'd bring this to the masses, especially because, like you said,
Don't bring
it's
joy to
not
the masses.
it's not available digitally, ironically.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see what that would look like if they were to
Yeah.
scan it really good. But
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah,
Okay. Let's, well, I don't, I'm going to read basically like, yeah, let's read the back.
yeah. Let's do that.
Sometime in the next century, Gotham City will need a new kind of hero. Welcome to Futureland. Take a ride into a complex new world. A world with a binary heartbeat dominated by a tyrant code. A computer virus from long ago has become the first digital dictator, calling itself the Joker. The only hope is a myth from the past, long before the virus plague. A legend rediscovered by an ordinary cop named Jim Gordon, the legend of the Dark Knight. The Batman returns to restore digital truth, digital justice. And on the inside, Javi, it says digital justice will be compared to these such dystopian visions as 1984, Brave New World, Blade Runner, etc., etc. LOL. Now, the back of that
Yeah.
description, what the shit? The first page of actual. So I say that I started reading this 4 days ago. I tried starting to read this like 2 weeks ago. And the first page itself, it's in a more expanded part of the beginning of that back synopsis that I just read, and my
Yeah.
mind just was very hard to be in the mood. And I'm like, not yet. Nope, not yet. Nope, not yet. I think digital justice, I talked to somebody recently who said this, that it may be the worst comic he's ever read.
Wow.
I have seen where this book is the butt of Batman comic jokes. It's the worst. It's like it's bad. It's the worst. I'm I don't think so. Uh I don't have one to come right out and be like, I think this is the worst. And also, that that's not my goal here is to let's
Right.
pick a book so we can shit on it for an hour.
Yeah.
That's not it because I have positives to say about this, which is crazy. I think the I think it's pretty messy. I think it does make some valid points on where the future's heading with technology.
Hmm.
I think it actually is inspirational to future Batman worlds and stories. And I also think that when you totally focus a story around technology, it's going to become outdated extremely fast.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know that Pepe Moreno had that in mind of trying to make a book that is going to feel that's going to be timeless. Uh, or maybe he I don't know. Maybe he knew this is gonna, and that's part of the point too, of where it's headed, where technology's heading. But I just think I always kind of feel like it's a bad move to be completely devoted to technology because it's technology's always moving and it's just gonna and then here so many of the I mean you say graphics because the book was made digitally, so
Yeah.
by graphics it looks rough at times, like really rough at times.
What seemed cool in 1990 when I read it yesterday
Uh-huh.
felt very like someone had taken video game stills from like an SNES game
Yeah.
and just arranged them in a pattern. um, on the page.
The
So
3D
it,
models are the biggest ones that jump out to me, and those are the pages I remember flipping through when I would spot this at that bookstore and look at the back and wasn't having any interest because I was a kid, so we're talking the same decade, and I'd see these pictures and I'm like, ugh, I don't like this. I don't like this. And I thought that that was the whole story was done in this way. And I
yeah,
just, man, I couldn't, it, like, I always look at the like creation of Toy Story and like the Pixar computers in the first stages of starting to position Buzz and Woody and stuff. And it's like, that's the breakthrough in this book, like with Joker and Batman. And I'm like, oh man, that he couldn't have thought this wouldn't age
age.
bad
Yeah,
quickly, right? Like,
yeah,
because I don't know much about this guy, this creator, Pepe. I had to look, what I came across, I heard, and if I'm wrong, okay. But I was like, it's not Peep. I guarantee it's not Peep. And what I saw was Pepe Moreno, big over in Europe, a very like kind of revolutionary in the sense of like he wasn't one to just fit in the mold. He was really trying to, he was original
yeah,
in his styles and stuff. And when he came to America and got work, you know, he was working for Warren Publishing and like he did Creepy and Eerie, so that's freaking awesome. And then also it was great to see that he actually was involved in designing character designs and stuff on Thundercats and
yes, yeah.
Silverhawks and Tiger Sharks. And so I'm like, oh, awesome. But I can't, and I've looked up some of his other pages of comic work that he did, and all that looks really cool. But it's just there's not going to be a an omnibus of Pepe Moreno's comic book work,
No,
which is kind of a
yeah.
bummer because some of these other pages I saw online of other works look pretty cool.
Maybe some like independent publisher in Spain
Yeah.
or his home country would. I like the back dust jacket. There's a quote, as one knowledgeable editor says, Pepe is a true visionary. What he's into now is what we'll all be into in 10 years. Heaven knows where Pepe will be by then. And here we're 35 years out, and it's like if you said Pepe Moreno to probably 95% of American comic book
Yeah.
readers, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. And two, like you and I were talking about before we turned on the mics, like there is digital comics out now.
Hmm.
Like people are drawing them digitally, but they're hand drawing them and just using the technology to draw, but they're not using the computer to render the art or create the art in the way that it is for this book. Like they're doing computer
Yeah.
coloring, computer lettering, but even like my brother, he's got like a nice iPad and the iPen or whatever, and like I've
Yeah.
got a buddy at work who does the same thing. Like they'll draw on their pads. So
Hmm.
it's done on the computer, not pen and paper, but it's not what this book was thinking maybe the future was.
Yeah. And and it's like it's not like the goal maybe that like, it's not far off. So the story itself, I think that synopsis is kind of a mess, but there's some nuggets in it that I find. Oh, this was partially influenced by Dark Knight Returns. I don't think anything
Yeah.
can convince me that this aspect right here was not inspired by Dark Knight Returns. I think portions of this story quite similar to Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
And
The
so it's like,
Batmobile
okay,
or the Batcraft,
yes, exactly. Like
very
basically the
much.
quote unquote Batmobile is very
Yeah.
much like that was like the most blunt thing I saw that's like this is Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
Some of the like the buildings constructed, I think so in some of the style, I think is it seems similar to Batman Beyond. So in my head, I feel like okay, so it's taking he was inspired by, and then he ended up inspiring. So that doesn't mean that Digital Justice is a complete throwaway book. The technology is like the lessons that James Cameron's been telling us since the 80s of like technology could soon overrule us. Like that fear was still like it's present in this book. You see that it's kind of true. I don't
Yeah.
think that's a bad idea. It takes a human to dodge the system and then in Jim Gordon's grandson, uh like I think that is pretty good. That's decent. Uh, and like what Batman is going to stand for, I think that's true to the character of Batman. So these are
Yeah.
like pluses that I do see in Digital Justice that unfortunately are because it's comic book medium quickly overshadowed by art. Like
Yeah.
it's a visual medium. If the book looks bad, it's gonna be tough for people to give it a shot. Like I firmly just believe that because comics are visual. They're pure, like they're a visual medium. And if you're turning people off by the images, well then I don't know that people are one gonna even give it a shot. And then two, like the over explanation of all this technology babble, it's way too much. Like maybe he inspired Scott Snyder to do that a little bit in his new 52 Batman because I think those are parts of Snyder's writing that I still think at times it's like there's too much explanation here. I don't think anybody gives a shit that much. We
Yeah.
don't need this much information on this. And there's a lot of that in Digital Justice. That's probably accurate, sure, but I don't care. I don't need it.
Yeah.
I don't need it. Scan code
Oh my God.
56012.739871250. Who cares? Move on. I don't care.
There was there was definitely like you talked about the art, and I know I probably showed this to Jack before, my son, but like I showed it to him the other night. I'm like, I'm gonna be talking about this, and he was just like, whoa, and like not in a good way. Like it did not.
He's a
It made
comic
him
reader.
want. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
on occasion. Like he slowed down a little bit, but he's got his Sonic comic collection and
Yep.
his Superman collection, um
Didn't hear
and
Batman in
he
there, but that's fine.
yeah, he's got some Damian Wayne comics.
Ugh. Damn it.
And well, no, he's got like he has Long Halloween on his shelf.
Okay, well then we're fine.
He's got
We're
Hush.
fine. Okay.
He's got Year One. But he's a big retro gamer. Like he has an Brooksold NES and SNES set up in his room and PS2
Nice.
and all that. So I figured he would appreciate this, and he was just kind of like, "Yikes!"
Hmm.
Like, oh, like that wasn't the reaction I thought someone who appreciates that stuff would have had. But I mean, I can see like from a 2025 perspective, like this is probably in like the 2070s or 2080s that it's taking place.
Sure. Yeah.
And like the way that the Joker virus and the Bat comp look is so antiquated by
Hmm.
even like 10 years ago standards.
Yeah.
When we've got like a big purple dude destroying the Avengers on the big screen, like
Hmm.
they couldn't have predicted that. They couldn't have rendered that at the time. Um, so like looking at like the Blade Runner aspect of it all, the influence, like Blade Runner took place in 2019, and if you look back like where we were in 2019, like there were no replicants wandering around LA. We
Yeah.
still don't have flying cars. So there's always going to be something that is going to feel aged and outdated when we finally reach that time that they're trying to predict.
Hmm.
Um, but on the other side, like we now have like AI in our phones,
Yeah.
and we're worried about
It's
hacking
listening to me right
and
now.
yeah, and the whole like we use biometrics to unlock our phones and do things, which is something they were starting to do then, with
The-
going to the crime scene and like looking at the
yeah.
DNA.
Yeah, so
But
that's
like,
like that's a little bit of a portion that I find to be completely correct. The opening pages where the guy's asking the other one, do you have any green? He's like, "Pff, of course I don't have any green on me. I don't carry cash." And I'm like, that's hilarious because I never carry cash. Why don't I carry cash? Because I feel like cash is like, oh, yay, extra fun money. So I'm like, nope,
yeah,
gotta leave it in the bank. And I think that's very, we're 35 years later. That's been happening for quite a while. That's the smallest nugget. It's not important to the story. It's not, oh my gosh, they predicted, but it's like that's something that instantly I plucked at. I'm like, well, that part's true. Like, and it's great that you just pointed out too, of like as with the crime scene and stuff, and even the security, constant security and facial recognitions and stuff, things that you and I grew up seeing in movies has become like can't the norm. It's on our freaking phones too. Of the
yeah.
unlocking is facial recognition and stuff. So, uh, the aspects of this are okay. Pepe, you're on it. Now I'm waiting for real life human cats to be fighting, and then we'll be like, he was ahead of the game. He knew. He knew what
Well,
was
even
coming.
even those like that
Snarf,
kind of
snarf.
like it it predicated like the splicers in Batman Beyond. But like I
Mm,
love how the back of the comic has like data like who's who files like breaking down all the tech and what
yeah.
the different things well, like the different aspects of the suit. And I wanted to point out that the bat suit has on board a 2 GB of storage memory.
Huge. Huge at the time.
Like the iPhone I have right now is 512 gigs,
That's hilarious.
but Batman in the future has
Yeah,
2 gigs.
he does.
Like I don't even know what you would do with that.
Have 6 videos
Yeah,
saved. That's it. Tops. By the time I get, it's funny because by the time I finished the story though, and I got to all that back stuff, I was like, I don't want to
you
be
didn't
here
want to go through
anymore.
it anymore.
I don't want to be here anymore. I'm done. Phew. Uh, we're talking about with the art, and it reminds me of the SNES, the like when the story parts would come up and it'd be, it'd show a character and then their dialogue of apparently what they'd said or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a charm. Like I'm a Nintendo loyalist, I think, as much as I like the other systems. I just always come back to Nintendo. I love Nintendo. It's what I grew up with, so obviously that's it. And I think the Super Nintendo, it does a really great job of yes, the further you get away from it, the more charming it still is. I think regular
Hmm.
Nintendo can feel, okay, this is a little too slow for me. Whereas I think
Yeah.
the Super can still move and it's still like, oh, it's still pretty fun and charming. And I think there's a lot of art in here of the characters and stuff that I think look like those kind of pixelated with some coloring. And
Yeah.
I'm like, if the whole book was like this, backgrounds and all, I think this could look really cool. Like I
Yeah.
actually removed the two uh futuristic Batman Beyond-ish things, and like I think that could be cool. They could make a like a grungy, which is funny because Moreno's some of his other stories that I look at pages looks very grungy, and I'm like, oh, I would like that. A grungy Batman done in that style, not with the 3D animated backgrounds and shit. I don't want any of that, but just like this character. Do you know which parts, like what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll
Yeah.
just shut up.
There was definitely parts where I felt like I could hear like the Nintendo Batman 89 game like music in my head.
Yeah.
And I could kind of see like how they would do like camera pans for like
Hmm.
those cutscenes for back then. Like when Jim comes across the Batman statue in the park. Like I
Hmm.
can see it like just slowly coming down and like the dialogue filling in word by word on the screen next to some pages. And and like I noticed when I read it like when I was a kid, like I could tell that there were panels being reused. But now reading it today, I'm like, well, that's just like I see like the why of that more. Not necessarily as a trying to make a statement, but like this is all the time we had. This it took a lot of work, so we're just going to cut and paste certain things, but now we're just going to use the same image but like punch in a little bit more, and regular artists do that sometimes too, but there is a lot of repetition in some of the work, which I would imagine would just be to kind of cut down on the workload.
Something that confused me throughout the book, and it was a little frustrating. Crime scene. So as you just said, of the people that were murdered in the park, and there's a Batman statue there, which actually it's funny because I think yes, there's tons of panels, but that shot of the Batman statue
Oh, I love
definitely
that
to me
shot.
make it's a cool shot, period.
That's
And
like an
it makes me
Aparo shot.
it makes me think of Affleck at the end of BVS in the jail cell
Oh,
of the lights behind, I
yeah,
a little bit of I'm like, oh, that's cool.
I could see
The
that.
Zack Snyder Red Digital Justice. But we get to the dialogue boxes slash bubbles and the coloring. I don't understand what was going on in his head in the coloring. A lot of times you can see, let's see, now they mostly keep them all like the same color, but you can see it's easy to see who's saying what.
Yeah.
Pages aren't numbered, so it's hard to say, but it's the page after what I just showed you. And it's like it's Gordon looking at those police box
Yeah.
things, and there's four dialogue boxes, and two are purple, two are white, and they all have an arrow like they're coming out of Jim Gordon's mouth. And I was just sitting here on this because previously, like if you go up on the page, they're all white. He's talking to his partner Lena. They're all white. And they're all talking. And so it's like, okay, but I can see where the arrows are pointing and who's talking. Here it's just him, four dialogue boxes, two are one color, two are the other, and apparently he's saying it all. The next page over, it's Lena and Gordon again. Lena this time has pink boxes, he's got purple, and then for no reason whatsoever at the bottom, Gordon also has a white one. And there's just like it can seem like a small issue, but when it's taken you out of following the story and you can't fully deduce like who is saying this, and then the police commissioner, the next page, he's talking white box, he continues talking, and now it's purple and it's purple, and it's just like an inconsistency here that's like you're making it distracting, which is not a good thing for a story because now you're not
Yeah.
focused on the story itself. It's like what's going on, oh, huh?
So
I don't know if you ran
the
into that.
yeah, there was one scene where it was like the thought bubble became the outward dialogue bubble. And because
Yeah.
it wasn't what I was accustomed to, it threw me off for a second.
Hmm.
But looking at those pages, my only guess as to the why of that is because the typical dialogue is in the standard white bubble.
Hmm.
But for those scenes, there's a lot of white on the page and in the background.
Hmm.
So they had to offset it with a different color to make the dialogue stand out. Because if you look at all that, like when Gordon's IDing the DNA, it's like there's no blue sky, it's a white sky. So he's talking and the bubbles are purple, but when we get into the trees, it goes back to the traditional white bubble dialogue so
Yeah.
you can see it. And the same thing with Lena and Jim in the elevator, like it starts off in a white space, so they're different colors, but then as it goes down into the art, they just keep it to keep it like consistent, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Eh, eh,
it is
eh.
as clear as the lettering is, it can be weird to follow along. And it's not disconcerting, but it's discombobulating to see
Yeah.
like sometimes how they do the thought bubbles. It's like these clear circles and it just doesn't look right because that's not what we're used to, I think.
Yeah, and I can't say that there aren't any other comic stories that do something different, and I immediately like, no, that's not what I'm used to. Wah. It's if it takes me out of it and it becomes distracting, then that becomes the issue. And there's a lot of stories that it doesn't become an issue because it's easy to continue just moving. There's with the almost like the narrator boxes, those were sporadic. Those were
Yeah.
written in a totally different tone. Those I felt like were, oh, you're writing for a novel here. I don't think this is a good way to, I don't know, to include this. Like I'm thinking of let's see, when Gordon shoots the Max Headroom news guy, I thought was a great
Yeah.
addition, a great nod. But when Gordon shoots the TVs after, yeah, because Lena dies because, well, let's just hurry up and get that over with, which I thought was really strange. If he's walking by TVs that say, Officer Lena died, and Gordon turns and shoots the TVs, and then the narrator box says, people watch as the man with the gun walks away. They wonder what caused him to lose it, to cross the line, and oftentimes they wonder if anyone is sane. If Jim Gordon, but Jim Gordon knows he is sane. If he weren't, this wouldn't be real, and he wouldn't hurt so much. It's like that's distracting. I just don't. Yeah, that doesn't work here. Just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's so sparse that it really stood out to me on this read through of how little there is of the that third person narration, if that's
Yeah,
what it is. Because sometimes I feel like it's the Joker almost. Um,
that'd be
and
a cool idea.
something that I thought of, that I noticed right off the bat on this read through, and I was just reading the credits just because before it started,
Hmm.
because I always just kind of gave everything to Pepe, but on the opening page it says dialogue Doug Murray. And thinking about it and reading the bio that's in the back, like he was from Spain in the Spanish army. After he got out, he traveled to the US in 1977 and was kind of driving around. And it mentions that he was learning English back then. So I'm wondering how much of this is like the reason that the dialogue and the narration is the way that it is because it's a translation maybe
Mm.
from what Pepe was doing, and then this is like the story he created, and then Doug Murray had to like fill in dialogue and make it sound more palatable maybe to like an English audience, English language audience. Because if you think of like is it Child of Dreams? What's the what's the Batman manga thing that looks like Keaton on the cover?
Child of Dreams.
Yeah, and then they translate it. They had like this is the Japanese version, but then we have an American translator for it. And I wonder if there's some kind of something got changed between the two languages, between, what Pepe was doing
I think that does always happen, and you can come
and
to,
Doug trying to like
well, it
fit it
kind
in.
of like you, I could say something to you, and you could be like, that's not how I would say it, but I get what you mean. And I
Yeah,
feel like that's kind of what happens, in which it's you get kind of the same point, just not the specifics. So, I mean, I get that.
there's definitely dialogue in here that feels like it's from a different era.
Yeah. It
Like
is 2084.
yeah. Well, like for 1990, some of this feels kind of like reading 50s Batman comics, if that
Okay.
makes any sense.
Yeah.
You
Jinkies.
know,
Nope, that's Scooby. Let's go a decade prior. I don't know. Holy
holy
digital age Batman.
incongruities, Batman.
There you go.
But it definitely there's a stiltedness to some of the dialogue and to some of the text sometimes that stands out from like a modern perspective. But if I were to read, like if this story was drawn by like I don't know, not Sheldon Moldoff, but like say Carmine Infantino,
Hmm.
like I wouldn't question it as much.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So a heavy point that we come to see um is that Gordon and his new Robin, which was a very quickly forced deal, and it's kind of an
Everything is really quickly
yeah.
for as dense
I
as it
think that's
is,
it. Yes.
for as dense as the book is, it took me a lot longer to read than I thought it would.
Same. Yep.
And but for as long as it took, like there's not everything's so surface level, it feels like.
It's almost
And
like
things move really quickly.
if they just stuck to Jim Gordon, who it doesn't take that long to find out. It's like, oh, okay, his like Commissioner Gordon was his grandpa. Okay, that means James Gordon had a son. That means James Gordon's not a serial killer. Huh, crazy. The
Well, it could have been Barbara.
it's
James, this James could be because he's not James Gordon the third. So in my head, I was thinking this was Barbara's kid
but if that's true. But now
because
you're
Barbara has never taken on someone else's last name.
that's true. But the children usually take, even if not married, the children take the father's last name. Usually.
I could see Barbara
So I
though
think that's why I leaned.
being like, I'm keeping my name for my father's legacy, and
Okay, let's go with Barbara. I prefer that anyway. But, um, Let's see.
I mean, and at the time too, like
Barbara Gordon ends up a police commissioner, so it's only
Jim
following the
Jr.
lineage.
was never really in my mind when I originally read this because
There we
at
go.
that point
There's the debate.
it was just Batman Year One,
Yeah.
and that was it really. And then we never really saw him again
So
until
it doesn't take long to get. He's a cop. He's noticing this
he's got the
technology.
Harrison Ford Blade Runner haircut.
It's just yeah, almost like a technology conspiracy going on here.
Yeah,
There's cover-ups going. Okay, that's your typical crime setup. Okay, cool. I'm in with that. There's all this extra crap around it. Okay, okay. And he ends up also, like you just said, for how dense the story is, how quick some things are. Oh, hey, all of a sudden, Bruce Wayne must have been Batman. Okay, you're running out of pages for explanation, apparently. He comes back to his apartment. For those who didn't read it, don't blame you. But he comes back to
oh
his apartment and his grandpa's stuff, not his dad's, his grandpa's stuff, scattered about in his apartment. And oh, look at this. It's all these old newspaper headlines about Batman and Bruce Wayne. And there's a bat suit, and Bruce wrote a letter. Obviously, that means Bruce Wayne was Batman. And there we go. And due to this virus that's getting bigger, this technology that's getting bigger, it powers up a robotic Alfred and a digital Batman.
yeah,
It actually sums it up pretty well as Alfred and Batman because they both have the same freaking text bubble color. Explained to this new Jim Gordon. Master Bruce realized that future criminal threats would be from another world, the digital world of the computer. He created me to handle such threats. The job took years, years during which he left the public's eye completely. While the creator worked, there were others attempting to enter the digital world for less noble reasons until finally, and then you cut to like news footage, and it's Joker. Mr. Joker, is it true that your computer virus was responsible for the failure of the Wall Street financial systems? Joker says, me? It couldn't be me. They just found me not guilty. Isn't this a great country? The land of opportunity. Ha ha ha. Joker, we find out, then went on to create his own digital uh, chaos that would take place in the future. And so that's like that's exposition to get you to this is what happened. This is why we are where we are now. And I don't think that that's bad. I do think that that is fitting for the character of Joker and that it's fitting for the character of Batman to
yeah.
prepare himself for this inevitability in the future. And
Victory's in the preparation.
how do I prepare for something that's going to be here when I'm gone? And because Bruce, like to me, Bruce Wayne would do that, you know? It's
Yeah,
like you're not like it you'll be dead. You won't be living with it. So why are you so concerned with what's going to happen when you're gone? Doesn't matter to him. He's got to be prepared for that. And so he creates a way to be prepared for that. Digital justice. And it ends up in a way of being Batman versus Joker. The idea in itself is fitting. The idea in itself is like, yeah, that works. It's the execution and the art and the exposition that totally just kind of buries that idea, though. Do you agree?
yeah, yeah. And there's those ID cards in the back, the character stacks that I found were interesting because it lists the Joker virus being created in 1992
Yeah.
and the Batcom being 2020.
Yeah.
Um, but
COVID
if I
created the bat comp.
yeah, and then we got James Gordon being born in 2033. So it's it's weird. I I like this story, but I think that's the nostalgia talking. And I couldn't necessarily put my finger on it back then, but now reading it with like modern eyes, there is there is not enough Batman. Like we get
Hmm.
the stereotypical like first night kind of thing, but it's all really quick and we don't really see a lot of them in action fighting crime. We get like a little corner, splash corner of Batman and
Yeah.
Robin, and but like everything, we have so much setup that by the time we get to Batman and Robin, there's not a whole lot, and he's pretty ineffective by the end. Like he
Hmm.
shows up, he gets captured, he gets digitized, and he doesn't, Jim Batman doesn't really do a whole bunch to make things happen. It's all the Batcom and the Joker virus. And even like the love story, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
between James and Gata,
That's a
um,
mess.
that
That's a
yeah,
mess.
it's like
She's a
she's a
mess.
brat. He saves her, and she's like, "You'd be cute if you weren't so like square or whatever."
Yeah.
And then just like one kiss, she's like, "Oh, I love you, Batman. You're James. I know it because I just know because the story demands it. And we're almost out of pages." And I think I accepted it as the time at the time because having all that prior Bat-Cat history in my head, like you just know that they're romantically attracted to each other. And so I overlooked it in 1990, but in 2025, like there's nothing in this story that gets them from I can't stand you, you're a brat, to let me kiss you and change your mind. Like
Hmm.
there's no sexual tension or really anything to get us to that character turn.
Well, not to
And
mention, I do think that Dark Knight Returns inspired her because it's, hey, let's show our boobs but cover the nipples.
right, it is
Like,
very
okay.
Nazi lady. I forget her name.
Risk
Bruno, not
risque.
Bruno.
I think it
Was
is
her name
Bruno.
Bruno? Okay.
Yeah. Well done. Uh
There is a lot
Hobby
of
says he
risque
doesn't
stuff.
remember Bruno, but he remembers Bruno.
Hey, we
But
don't talk about Bruno.
exactly. Thank you. But I think that that character is written as a mess through and
Yeah.
through. I just think
And
it's a
then you
complete
get that
mess.
last minute swerve of her being a clone of the mayor.
Yeah, then the mayor's like, by the way,
Like
you're a clown. I'm your mother. Dad.
I always wondered who my secret benefactor
What?
was. And you're like, there's
Okay.
so much backstory that we explore and so much that's just thrown out there just to
Hmm.
get it out there. And
The
there's such a good, I think there is a good concept and idea here,
Yeah,
but it's not fully baked,
yeah.
you know?
Yep. And there's it can not fully baked. Also, it makes more sense to use parts of this for a Superman story involving Brainiac. You know, that
Mhm.
seems like a much more obvious route to go with something like this. And you just mentioned I totally had Dark Knight Returns of when Gordon suits up as Batman for the first time. It's pretty fast. It's a couple pages, but I really like the pages. I actually really like the
Yeah.
art. I think it looks cool, looks good. It's the and then as Max Headroom is giving us that like, building up this myth of Batman's return and blah blah all that. It's like, yeah, all that's awesome. All that's cool. I completely dig that. Um the mayor's stuff also speaking to these heads got me always confusing of I don't know, but as I was just flipping through, I realized another like a nugget that I think is good and is pretty cool is or like there's something here. There's meat on this bone is when Joker is in this Batman program's let's see, a digital hostage in my world. That's creative. You mess with my code anymore, baddie, and your buddy gets deleted. So he's got real life Batman linked up. But now I've got time to rummage around in your core memory, in which he experiences the Wayne murders, and he says, the memory that made you, well, that nasty little trauma that happened while you were a wetware 6-year-old never bothers me. 6, 8, 10. Does it you?
Yeah.
He's a kid.
No. Yeah.
Okay. He's a kid. It happened. The memory that made you what you are while you were a living body, I couldn't get at it. But now I can not only get at it, I can erase it. And when what makes you what you are ain't anymore, you're not what you are. In fact, you just plain aren't. I like that. That's like
Yeah.
that's a little nugget that I'm like, that's cool. That's good. Like he can literally go back and erase what happened to you. Then you're not I don't know, like we've always put so much emphasis on the moment that created Batman. And it's like, what if you take that away? And they've explored that in different avenues. And I'm like, that's good. Like I'll argue that that's flat out good. And then there's diarrhea all around it, which kind of ruins it. It's
Yeah.
oh gosh. Okay. And
And
not to
there's
mention that image of Batman, they totally dupe us. They take the image of the Jim Gordon Batman being linked up, they put it on the cover, but they change his outfit and
yeah.
everything. I'm like, I hate that crap. I don't like when you do that. That's a robbery. You're deceiving
Yeah.
us.
Well, it's like it was paving the way for let's go with like the Marvel Spider-Man stuff. You watch like any of the home trilogy trailers and Spider-Man will be in one suit, but
Hmm.
then you see the movie and he's in a completely different suit. But in the
Yeah.
trailer, he was in that suit. Or
Yeah.
even the first Spider-Man movie, he's in the costume jumping on the car, but in the actual movie, he's in his wrestling suit. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it's like, I get, but then also it's like, you're duping us.
Yeah.
Knock it off. The end
But
of
I
the
think
story? Go ahead. Sorry.
there's like interesting stuff that again just gets left on the table. Like they show briefly of when Gordon's investigating the crime scene and he's going off on the servos, which is like basically the Ed 209 but in Gotham.
Hmm.
And the media man like changes it and he edits things, and so it's like instead of being angry cop, he's like, man, we sure are dumb, and if it wasn't for these things, just we would have died if
Yeah.
these robots hadn't come in, and good thing they were here. And later when he becomes Batman, um they throw away a line about manipulating the media so it makes Batman like this killer, but we never see it affect the population of Gotham and how they view him or how the public perceives him or
Yeah.
even how Batman feels about now being framed and depicted as something that he isn't. Like
Hmm.
there's a cool story, like there's some good tension that would come
Yes.
from that if it was more than a panel.
Because I think that's a point that you could argue Moreno was ahead of the game in not media manipulation, but things aren't what you're being shown.
Yeah, especially now when we
And
do
now at a
have
time,
all
yeah,
this.
yes, exactly. And that's what I was just gonna say is maybe there's always been a case there to argue that in the past, but there are cameras everywhere. There's exposure everywhere now, and things can be manipulated, put online, and believed as being true.
Yeah,
I could create. Yeah, I've always said of like I can grab a picture of you and put text on there that says, "I think BOF is the worst website." Put it out there, and people say, "Man, did you hear Javi said BOF's the worst website?" And it's flat out like that's not true.
and
And
people are going to believe it.
so the uprising, the people that will be coming after you, Javi. My goodness, the
They're
pitchforks. Oh my heavens. They knock down your
going
door.
going back to like earlier in our conversation when we last saw each other. I took a picture that night of Peter Veras sleeping on the hotel
Oh
couch in
yeah.
the lobby.
He said a lot of
And then
things.
and then later I photoshopped a Zur-En-Arrh Batman figure tucked into the crook
Damn
of his
right.
arm.
Yeah.
And if you look at it small enough
That really
or
happened,
on your
Javi.
phone,
I don't
it
know what you're
looks
talking
like
about.
Peter is cuddling with a Zur-En-Arrh Batman
He
figure.
snuggles with a
So,
Zur-En-Arrh Batman every night.
yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about. You manipulated nothing. That was reality.
you remember that.
I do remember that. Yeah. He loves that thing. But so like that, as you were just describing, it's like that being there in the cover up, and what Jim's kind of seeing is these machines, if you will, that are crossing the line. That's a valid conversation to have with technology that, we've seen countless times in all forms of media. Uh, it's worthy exploring, but then it's just like it's half it's half a step forward and four steps back.
Yeah.
Each time that there's a good point, it's like, but you've got this excess stuff that's pulling it back, that you're dogpiling on top of it, that it gets lost in the crap. And it's just like that's just what I think digital justice kind of is at a whole. I can't tell you what the hell happened at the end. Batman fought Joker and they both died. Oh, but they're like
or but they
programs. Okay.
became one and then went somewhere.
Yeah. They could just play the Spice Girls song, When to Become One.
Yeah.
Summarizes it all right there. Also, it was in the 90s, so it fits. So that, and then, yeah, and then you got Grata as Catwoman because, which
Gata,
she was a little
which is
before
Spanish for
Gata, yes.
female cat.
Okay. Is it?
Yeah.
Gata is?
Gato
Okay.
boy, Gata girl.
Gata. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. It
Yeah.
all makes
So
sense.
she's
It's all
already a
connected.
Catwoman before she becomes Catwoman.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'll hold on. Let's just go to the last page instead of me trying to
That design,
reminisce.
man, as cool as I think Batman and Robin look in this, not a fan of the Catwoman design with that
No.
mask, with the digital whiskers and the mouth.
But is it?
N-
Yeah. Who won? Good or evil? Technology, humanity, us, or the machines? And mankind won. The wrestler, Mick Foley. And Robin says, "Does that mean we have to take the costumes off? So back to being." Got it. No, we also have a lot to do. We've gotten too dependent on technology. It would be too easy to allow the balance to shift back. And it's like, yeah, you guys do that, and game over. I was like, okay. Uh, great.
Like the last
Uh,
line is great. Humanity needs technology, but it also needs something else, something to
yes,
believe in, to
I agree.
trust, something
Yep.
like the spirit of the Batman. Like that's really cool, and I want to see like more, but
What?
then we're done.
Digital Justice 2? 35 years later? To trust something like the spirit of the Batman. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's something that does hold true as well. Boy,
Like
my
there's
God.
so much potential on the table. Like I'd
Hmm.
love to know where it would go and whether things would pop up, but
But I'm not
I'm not
usually
holding my breath
one.
for it.
Yeah. I don't know. They could be like, Top Gun
Hey,
did it. All we
we
need
got
is 35
Elseworlds.
years and we can do a
Elseworlds
sequel.
is back. We could do,
But this is not Elseworlds.
yeah.
Like that's what I saw and I totally agree when I was looking stuff up online, which surprisingly there's not for as much as apparently people know this book, there's not a whole lot on it.
Yeah.
And that was something that I totally agree with that though it's futuristic, it's not Elseworlds. And I totally agree with that. Elseworlds is something different. Pete and I will tell Bill that all the time. Anyways, let's see. Do you have anything that you wanted to bring up that we hadn't brought up?
Robin has a Back to the Future hoverboard.
Oh, yes. Sure
And
does.
my friend and I thought that was the coolest thing back
You
then.
wanted
And we
one.
would make little hoverboards out of Legos for our Robin figures. And
That's funny. And doesn't it
what do you
the,
think of his costume with the muted colors for Robin?
the original suit
Like,
I
is
think
that a
looks good.
purple cape or a gray cape
The original
or a
one looks good,
lavender cape?
I
Yeah,
think. I don't like the upgrade as much, but I would
it's
still look at it and
it's
say
like
it's
Robin's stealth suit, but it still has the legs, the bare legs. But now he's got knee pads because he's a
yeah.
skateboarder, so it breaks it up a little bit.
I would still look at it and think it's Robin, but I don't like it anywhere near as much. It's fine.
It's not the cool Tim Drake costume.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neil Adams.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, so Robin, there you go. Anything else? Are you ready for some questions?
I'm ready. Yes, I have a question,
You
or
have
I
a
have an
question.
answer
You
for
have
the
an answer
question.
to the
I have an answer for
questions
the
that are coming.
question
Oh,
that
okay.
are coming.
Too many questions.
Yes, you've got a question?
Javi, what was your favorite part of digital justice?
Oh, dang it. I should have been prepared for this too. Um,
That's
I
kind of tough.
like, I
Favorite.
like, yeah. The first. the first night out, I think, is would probably be my favorite. And that's the sad thing is like it's only like a couple of panels. But just how he's like, this is my city now. I'm the Batman. And yeah, that first shot that we see of Jim as Batman, I dig it.
Okay. That's funny because that is also mine. I do like the Dark Knight Returns moment.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite. I kind of didn't mind the new Batmobile picking them up and taking them to Wayne Manor because there's just some it for story that's a little bit of exposition, yes, but you're getting some hey the updates. In this story, this is what happened to Bruce and Alfred. Like I did like that, but I'm like, well, let's be serious. If I ever crack this open again, what am I gonna look at? I'm gonna look at the Dark Knight Returns. Now, Javi, in a book that is so perfected visually on every panel, on every page, this is gonna be tough. What was your favorite panel?
It really hasn't changed in the last 35 years. I just like the cleanliness and the crispness of the Time magazine Izzy back cover
Mm-hmm.
because you just get a straight shot look of Batman. He's got like a Jim Aparo type cape. I like the yellow oval that's on it. And like we said earlier, like there's not a whole lot of Batman in here, you
Yeah.
know. There's great shots like we mentioned before of the statue being lit from behind and
Yeah, that's cool.
the cover that gets reused inside the book.
Mm-hmm.
But that's always been an image I've gone back to and just kind of looked at and thought was really cool. So yeah, I think that's my
That's
favorite part,
it was definitely in
my favorite
consideration.
page.
I had to pick a couple, and I'm on the page prior, and I think that panel where he's got his wings out with the crooks.
Yeah, yeah,
And though
that's a
he's
good one
it's
too.
the positioning is strange
And then it
because
gets reused, but like the lower half, it the way
yeah,
it's laid out
that's
is
weird.
very
And it's so weird because
discombobulating.
you just think that they would just do one layout, and but no, they break it up, the pieces up and place them differently, and it's really like weird. So just that first panel though, even though he's kind of obstructed by the borders,
Yeah.
it's still like I think that looks good. Batman looks good there. The heavy question now.
Yes.
Would you like to see this adapted in animation?
Yes. I
You
think
whoa.
I think
Whoa,
there's a
whoa, whoa, whoa,
good
whoa.
I think there's a good blueprint
Hmm.
for a story here that a modern perspective could flesh out in 80 minutes and change the focus and give us a little more Batman. And I would want to see it because of the medium in which this was created. I want to see it done in more of a digital CGI animation. Maybe not necessarily like a Beware the Batman style,
Hmm.
but maybe like the Battle of the Super Sons, where it's a
Oh,
little
look,
more
that was a good movie.
glossy, but you can tell that it's like a CGI animation style. Like I don't want it to look like the traditional. I don't want it to look like BTAS. I don't want it to look like Cape Crusader or the Batman. Give it that computerized art to match. It doesn't have to look like this book does, but give
Thank
it
God.
that computer style to make it stand out and
Yeah.
bring some digital to the justice.
Hey, oh,
I think you could make a better movie out of this than what we got in the graphic novel and add some more layers that we talked about were missing from the original story.
I don't disagree with you. My instant answer is no, but
Yeah, I get it.
I do think it could serve as inspiration, and there are parts that could be pulled. I'm also not interested in this cliched, futuristic style story where you just it just, and I say cliche because it seems when you hear the future, everybody's got the same image, and then you see it, and it looks so bland. and it's
Yeah.
boring. And I'm not so invested of Batman versus technology. I'm not interested in that kind of story. Like I want physical, actual Batman versus a human being, human beings doing things, and it's not
Yeah.
purely reliant on technology. And I think that's what holds me back from even saying like, yeah, give me an adaptation
And
of
I
this
think
story, but update it and correct the mistakes and blah blah blah. And like we'd still get a lot of that futuristic, and I don't want that. I'm not interested.
I think you could push the what is real versus what's AI concept,
Sure.
and have him be, trying to be off the grid away from the system and going old school. Like I think there's something really cool that they could mine there that would feel
Yeah.
very Batman, because what's Batman but this system isn't working, so I'm going to become Batman
Yeah.
to fix the system. Like I think you could take that and make it
It's very
work for this
poetic.
story. Yeah.
Very poetic of you, Javi. Javi's deep, he's very deep
I got my
about this.
moments.
I had my moment. So digital justice. What are your final thoughts on this book
Uh
that will be remembered, like
yeah.
1984 and Blade Runner?
Blade Runner got a Blade Runner 2049.
You know
So,
what? Damn right it did.
digital justice 2099. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a Marvel thing. Never mind. Um, I think my nostalgia outweighs the quality for it.
Okay.
And I still enjoyed it, but it's also something I haven't read in a really long time. There's probably a reason for that. Like
Yeah.
it's not going to be
Yeah.
one of my go-tos. It's not White Knight. It's not,
It's very close.
it's not Long Halloween. It's not going to be. There's a reason why it's not out there as much, or
Yeah.
reprinted at all like other
Or
things.
digital.
Yeah. So, but I think it's worth revisiting, or it's worth checking out just once to be like, this is a weird Batman oddity
Yeah.
that had a certain place in history. Um, but it is nowhere near the
Mhm.
paragon of anything.
If
So,
if I'm, I'll just bring it back to kind of what I said towards the beginning of, I think that there are good ideas and some good moments in the book, and it's really pulled back by trying to be too gimmicky.
yeah.
And I, oof, it was not the worst thing that I've ever read. And I'm not going to
Oh
be too
no, yeah.
harsh, but I'm not going to be an apologist and be like, well, actually, digital justice ain't that bad. No, definitely not. I don't know. I don't know if I'll revisit it again. I can't say I won't ever look at it again because a couple of those Batman pages I think are good.
Yeah.
And there can serve some inspiration of how some of like the coloring of some of these characters and stuff and the environments I think could serve as inspiration for a cool grungy look of a Batman book also because I'm making so many of those these days. So yeah, Digital Justice is it's not my favorite. And I if you can I am one that is it's hard for me to just tell somebody flat out don't do it. If you come across it and it's only $5, it's like it's only $5 and you can say, "Hey, at least I've read it."
Yeah.
Like that's my sell on it, which I know is not great, but
It's not a
like
ringing endorsement. No.
no, but it's like at least you'll do it. I'm glad that I read it. Like period. I did the work, I read it, I talked about it with you and was able to highlight some things that are like this is actually something worth noting in a positive way, as well as figuring out, I had my mind made up a little bit, but then also hearing your points too on things that held it back that helped me understand a little more. Like that's why it didn't work as well for me is because this was holding it back. So Digital Justice.
There we go.
It's a book that Batman is in. Javi, thanks for coming back and picking such a
Thanks for having
gem,
me, man.
such a hot topic. Why don't you go ahead and plug away whatever you're up to?
The 007 Files is a James Bond podcast that I co-host with Bill Koenig and David Lee. We just had season 2 drop. Episode 1, we interview music producer Neil S. Bulk. He is a soundtrack producer who's brought many soundtracks back, like expanded versions like Batman 1989. And we talk License to Kill, a new release from La La Land. I've got my YouTube channel Up to Speed with Wally West, where I go issue by issue through the Wally West Flash run. And of course, BatmanOnFilm.com, where I'm reviewing Batman and Robin Year One, Catwoman, Gargoyle of Gotham, and co-host on Batman Animation, which you and I, we alternate.
Frequent.
And then the comic binge with Paul Herman and Chris Clow. Chris and I have our series within a series talking the Grant Morrison Batman titled Knights Never Die. And we just finished issue 666 of Batman with the future Damian Wayne as the Dark Knight. So we're full on now going into the Black Glove and the Club of Heroes.
Funny because I just read The Absolute Batman and Son, which is Grant Morrison's run
So
up
good.
until RIP. And
Yeah,
I always
that's
have
a
to
great
make
book.
sure to shout out Javi Trujillo that I enjoyed the run up to RIP.
Then you got frustrated.
And then I got frustrated. And rereading The Absolute, the one that I still just don't enjoy that much is The Clown at Midnight.
You're with
prose
Paul on that.
issue?
Yeah.
It's Grant, I think, really falling in love with his words. That it really takes a long time to
That's fair.
get through that one because he just loves writing these words. But I have it queued up because I was waiting to revisit all of this and then to listen to some of your guys' discussions on Knights Never Die, and that's one that I've got queued up ready to go. Next time I have the time to sit and listen.
Spoiler alert, Paul was not a fan.
Paul doesn't like words; he likes pictures.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he does love The Long Halloween. It's his favorite comic book story. Marvel, DC, anybody of all time. The Long Halloween. Paul loves it. I'll make sure he listens to this discussion.
I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't? Only weirdos would not have that as their favorite Batman story of all time, right, Paul Herman? Anyways, let's see. As for the Batman Book Club, follow on the socials at the Batman BC. Latest episode drops, upcoming episodes, and giveaways. There'll be some coming up. YouTube, subscribe to the Batman Book Club YouTube channel. Pete and I are going to no man's land. It's happening, and it's happening soon. I promise.
Yes.
If you want to support the show, variety of ways you can do that. Patreon.com/thebatmanbc, tpublic.com, type in TBBC for the Batman Book Club. But if you don't want to spend any money at all, it's 100% A-OK. Easiest, quickest, most impactful thing you can do to help the show. That's right. Anybody can help the show. Just rate and review the show. Wherever you listen to it on your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, go to rate and review section. Rate and review the show, because the more the more reviews we get, the more it helps spread the word. And as we all know, that word is, you got it, Javi, what is it?
Panic.
That's right. Amen. 20 years ago, we found out that the word was panic. So for Javi Trujillo, I am Ryan Lauer. Until next time, remember.